Movie Nut here with a review for The Distinguished Gentleman, the 1992 comedy film starring Eddie Murphy, Lane Smith, Sheryl Lee Ralph, Joe Don Baker, and James Garner. The film follows a Florida con man called Thomas Jefferson Johnson, who uses the recent death of the state's congressman, who also is named Jeff Johnson, to get elected into Congress, with the intention of snatching up the payrolls and other assorted monies that politicians get. However, when he arrives in Washington, D.C., he soon finds that things are more complicated and intriguing than he first expected, and soon finds himself doing the very thing he thought he would never be doing while in office: caring. The acting all around is not particularly great. Aside from Eddie Murphy in his usual manic form, none of the other cast here really give any kind of standout performance. I mean, obviously you have familiar faces like Joe Don Baker and Lane Smith, aka Perry White from the late 90s Superman TV show, in here as the various politicians, but they don't stand out in any way. They're there and they're not bad to watch, but they don't create interesting or very compelling characters. And really, they're just there to play to the film's obvious archetypes of greedy politicians and businessmen. And frankly, Eddie's friends in the film, the other con artists, as well as a activist and her reverend uncle, much like the businessmen, are really nothing to comment on. Again, they don't give bad performances, but their characters are just so one-dimensional, so archetypical, and just really are there to serve the plot and not really develop unique or interesting personalities. Really, most of them are plot points there, just so that we can get on with the story of the film and see how Eddie's character grows and changes as he sees the true colors of the US Congress. Now, as for things like design and music, really there isn't too much to comment on, since this is set in the real world, and really all I can say is it looks good enough. I mean, Congress looks like it should, the velvet and the oak and the buffed up suits and the ties and the dinner jackets, and it's pretty much all as you expect. You've seen this kind of look in 100 other political films, and the score by Randy Endelman is very much unnoticeable and doesn't really play that much of a role in the film, except to deliver the obvious American patriotic tunes whenever you see a scene in Congress and you hear the dun 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 dun, dun kind of American, anthem in the background, which is passable. At least it's not an overused irritation. It doesn't try to become the film's running theme. And now, of course, for the big thing, and the main thing in any comedy, the script, i.e. the humor and the pacing. And this is where The Distinguished Gentleman truly falls flat. Now, it isn't as bad as, say, the Seltzerberg films or a really bad black comedy like, say, Soul Plane, but it's just nothing impressive here. There is nothing here that made me laugh hard, like really gave me a good belly laugh. Here I chuckle at least 4 or 5 times during the film, but that was about it. The film made me chuckle and slightly giggle at the odd references here. And by the way, the main chairman, aka the main antagonist's name, is Dick. Yep, you can see where that's gonna go. In fact, they even show that scene in the trailer. About the only time where it really amounts to a good laugh is during the scene when they're hunting and the hunters are using automatic machine guns, and when one of the ducks falls in the river, riddled with holes, Eddie just says, "Must have had a heart attack." And that's about the only time that the film really tries to go for it. Apart from that, it's just a bunch of innuendos again with the whole Dick thing, and Eddie just being manic and doing all his different voices, which give me chuckles, but are not the kind of standout things that you may expect from one of Eddie's earlier comedies. And as for the pacing, the film, despite being under 2 hours, is too slow. I mean, it's not boringly slow, it's not tortoise slow, but it's just too slow for this. This is supposed to be a screwball political comedy, but it just plays like a TV sitcom at points. It just moves too slow, and very often it just feels like padding between the jokes. As I said, the fact that the characters are not particularly interesting or memorable here and are just archetypes don't help in the slightest with the film's problems. And it really brings down the experience. Believe me, I really wanted to like this film, but nothing here is just that impressive, and that's shocking considering that A, this is starring Eddie Murphy pre-Pluto Nash, and B, this is directed by Jonathan Lynn, aka one of the masterminds of classic political series such as Yes Minister. So you'd think these two guys together would come up with one of the best political comedies of all time, but that's not the case. Here we just get a very watered down political comedy for beginners. There's just nothing here that stands out. It's just too slow. Furthermore, the love story that is in here between Eddie and the activist just doesn't work. It's cliched and you've seen it 1,000 million times before and done so much better. Again, it doesn't help that the actress doesn't seem very inspired in her role. And furthermore, for being a political film, it isn't really all that political. We never really learn that much about Congress and the inner workings. All we really get out of the film is, oh yeah, congressmen are corrupt and greedy, and it's like, that's all you have to say? This is the best you could come up with? And so I must give the distinguished gentleman a bronze star, but a very, very, very low bronze star. As I said, Eddie's energy and the occasional chuckles save this film from being completely unwatchable, but really, there is nothing to recommend here. This is very much a political comedy for people who aren't into politics or just all-around dummies. The casting is uninspired, the movie moves too slow, and really, there's just nothing here. This just isn't as funny as it should be, considering the talent involved, and it just feels like a really wasted opportunity. And really, the best thing about this is the beautiful painted poster. Frankly, if you want to see a good Eddie Murphy comedy, it should be pretty obvious that Beverly Hills Cop or Coming to America is more worthy of your time.